Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, etc., whenever you may be watching this. In our last video, and go ahead and go back and watch it, we took a look at Genesis chapter 20, and we see Abraham and Sarah fail again at the same idea that they did in Egypt. One of the things that's important to remember, though, is that when God makes a promise to us that is based solely upon Him, He keeps that promise, right? There are promises, a lot of promises made in Scripture, right, that are covenants, promises between us and God, right, where we have to hold up our end of the bargain. But what we see here with Isaac being born, which we're going to see here in chapter 21, is that it is a promise made by God to Abraham and Sarah that nothing's going to break. And though Abraham is not perfect, he is a great man of faith, though he is not perfect, God is going to bless him and work through him and take that as comfort for us. Now, we are not Abraham, but that God still works in us and through us, even though we, will fail and we will have our issues at times, right? So we're going to jump into chapter 21 here today, and I'm going to read the first 8 verses, and then we'll go from there. Then the Lord took note of Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I've borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. It's important to note as we walk into this that it takes 25 years, roughly 25 years, from the time God first promises Abraham a son through Sarah for the promise to be fulfilled. We get upset when we have to wait 1 or 2 weeks or months or days or hours or whatever it is for God's promises. Abraham has to wait 25 years before it is fulfilled. He's 75 years old when God first speaks to him about this, and he's 100 years old when Isaac is born. So keep that in the forefront of your minds. The very first few verses of chapter 21, emphasize the fact that God keeps his word. We read things like, as he had said, or as he had spoken. God keeps his word, right? We like to say that our word is something very important here on earth, right? Oh, I've given you my word, right? To God, it truly is. If he speaks, it is a promise that we can hold true to, excuse me, and rest on and rest in. And that's true of his written word as well, right? God really doesn't, it's not that he can't. I don't want to say God can't do this. He just doesn't very much anymore because we have the Bible. God speaks to us through his word, through the Bible. And the promises we read in there, we can rest assured God will hold to because he said it. And it's also important to note, right, going back to the 25 years thing, that things happen, on God's timing, not on ours. We often become impatient waiting on God when we need to learn to be strong in our faith. Now, this is not me pointing fingers. I fall into this category myself as well, right? We will, we get so impatient. We begin questioning, we begin doubting, etc., etc. And the matter of the fact is that God works in his own time. He is not beholden upon to what you and I think, the way that you and I want to work. And so while we don't like that, I don't necessarily love that, right? I want God to work in my timing. He's just not going to. He works in his own timing. It's also important to note, changing gears just slightly, that it appears that God completely rejuvenated the bodies of Abraham and Sarah. This is not just, oh, I'm going to allow you to have a son, but everything else works correctly as well. We know that Sarah becomes, quote unquote, young enough again to give birth and then to nurse Isaac. We read that in verse 7. Um, your bodies, for those of you that are old enough or understand anatomy and stuff, your bodies will stop being able to do these things. And so God performs this miracle. We also know that it wasn't a one-time thing with Abraham, because we read in chapter 25, a few chapters from now, that Abraham has six other sons with his second wife after Sarah dies. He remarries to a woman named Keturah, and he has six other sons with her. So God completely rejuvenates the body. This was not a one. This was not a miracle. It was a miracle. Let me complete the sentence. Right. This was not a miracle that was simply, oh, God allowed them to have a child. It appears that God rejuvenates their bodies, makes them literally like 30 years younger in body, so that they could do this. It's so much more. When God does a miracle, He doesn't do it half baked. He goes the whole way because He's God. Right. And the name Isaac means laughter. And it's a fitting name, as they would be reminded, both Abraham and Sarah would be reminded of how they had laughed when they heard God's promise. Now, remember, way back a few chapters ago, right? Abraham laughs in amazement, in awe. Sarah laughs in doubt. Both would be reminded by the name of their son. And eventually he's weaned, he's circumcised, etc. Um, and so we're a few years down the line where we pick up verse 9. A few years happen in verses 1 through 8. Let me jump into verse 9 here. Now Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. Therefore she said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son, for the son of this maid shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her, for through Isaac your descendant shall be named. And of the son of the maid I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy and sent her away. When she departed and wandered about in the wilderness, and she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was used up, she left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him, about a bow shot away, for she said, do not let me see the boy die. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. God heard the lad crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him by the hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. God was with the lad, and he grew, and he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. So Ishmael is roughly 16 years old by this point, give or take. And it seems like he's forgotten as Isaac is born. And I don't want to defend this. It's not right, right? He is Abraham's son. But I also think it's understandable, or it's understandable, first off, that Sarah especially just kind of disregards him. And I also think it's understandable that Ishmael would harbor resentment and mock Isaac. He's the firstborn son. He's been alive for 16 or so years. He's, and he's just kind of shunted aside, especially by Sarah, because it's Hagar's son. Now, should Ishmael have been born to Hagar from Abraham? No, frankly, that's not what should have happened. We know that. Um, but he is. And Abraham had a duty to take care of Hagar and Ishmael just the same as he has a duty to take care of Sarah and Isaac. But we've seen already that Sarah has an issue as pertains to Hagar. And frankly, I think it would be an issue common to most women that would be walking through the same idea, right? We've talked about before, and if not, let me reiterate for you, that's kind of part of the fall. Men deal primarily, our sin primarily lies in lust, right? While women's sin primarily lies in resentment and bitterness. Um, that old adage of, men will fight each other and then go get a beer afterwards, while women will pretend everything's okay, yet hate each other for 20 years, right? and I'm not trying to be like, I'm not, we're generalizing here. Let me phrase it that way. We're generalizing here. But I think a lot of people that were in Sarah's shoes would hate Hagar the same as Sarah does, even though, frankly, it's her fault. She's the one who pushed Abraham to do this. Um, and so she can't endure this anymore. She loathes these people. She can't endure this mocking. And so she wants to get Ishmael away. She wants to send him away. Get him out of here. And Abraham doesn't know what to do. He can't figure out how to work out this issue that, frankly, he created, right? Sarah pushes him into it, but he should have said no, but he doesn't. He created this issue 16 years prior. He doesn't know what to do. And so God comes to his aid, right? And I want to make this clear. Sarah's attitude is completely and utterly completely wrong as it pertains to this whole thing. She's not like, well, God promised this. We read it in there. Not Abimelech, excuse me. Ishmael will not be part of the promise. He won't be. And she's right, but it's not out of some faith and understanding of God. It's out of bitterness and resentment. But she is still actually correct that Isaac was the promise, not Ishmael. And so God shows up and tells him, split the families. I will take care of Ishmael and Hagar. And parceling this out, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, in order to follow the will of God, we must separate ourselves from those who are carnal and are going to cause friction. Sometimes we just have to, right? What do I mean by carnal? I mean people that are not actively attempting to follow the will of God, right? People that are sinners. We're all sinners, but people that are not trying to live a godly, righteous life. Sometimes we have to separate ourselves from them. I don't mean to just constantly live in a bubble. We're going to read in a few moments here about Abraham spending time with Abimelech and such, right? But when it becomes untenable, sometimes, remember, we talked about this with Abraham and Lot a number of chapters ago. Sometimes it's best just to split. And though it may be difficult and even cause others to criticize and ridicule us, sometimes it's the right thing to do. Now, it should be done only when we've prayed about it, when we've sought God's wisdom and counsel about it, when we've sought counsel and wisdom from other people. It's not something to be done lightly. Yet, we need to do it sometimes. And as I mentioned already, God does assure Abraham that though Ishmael is not part of the promise, God would take care of him. God's going to make him a great nation. He tells him that. And we know that that comes to pass, right? Isaac, of course, is the father of the Hebrew nation, and Ishmael is the father of the Muslim nations. It's one of the reasons that the two groups hate each other so much. They hated each other, and it continued on down throughout. But God makes Ishmael into a great nation. No one can deny that. And talking about Hagar and Ishmael, it's important to note that God allows Hagar and Ishmael to come to the end of their strength before he intervenes. And oftentimes he does that with us too. It's not because he's sick and sadistic and finds it funny or anything like that, but it's because he needs us to understand our reliance on him is paramount. He is the one who is working in our lives. He is the one who can help us and work through us. And we need to rely solely on him, right? He causes this well to show up. As Hagar can't bear to watch her son die, she sees this well, and eventually he marries an Egyptian woman, and eventually he's going to be the father of, frankly, many great nations throughout what we would know as the Middle East in today's day and age. Okay. We're gonna save the last part of chapter 21 till next week. I try to keep these videos right around 15 minutes, and I'm afraid we'll get up into the 20-minute range and stuff like that if we don't end here. So make sure you come back next time to our next video where we'll look at Abraham and Abimelech, and we'll probably start chapter 22 at that point as well. God bless, guys. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Keep comments civil. Try to answer actual questions. Some people have left some comments on previous videos that are just I'm not, I'm not gonna get into most of those. Frankly, it's not gonna fix or change a lot of things. All it will cause is internet debate, and that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to try to help us understand the book of Genesis as best as we can. But if you have questions and stuff, leave them down below. You're free to comment as well, right? Just keep it civil. And God bless, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Bye bye.